August 10th, 2023. I'm Scott Rigby. This is the Helm weekly dev meeting. Hello, everybody. Karen, did you wanna say something, or was that kind of before?
Oh no, I said
Okay.
I'll do notes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Looks like we have some things in the agenda. Very first thing is a discussion, or actually, I guess first is an announcement. Do you want to take that, Matt?
Sure. There was a 3.12 patch release that was supposed to go out yesterday, and we all seem to have missed it. And I'll try and get it out today. There's only 2 changes in it, a bug fix and an upgrade to the Kubernetes packages we use, but it's enough we can put something out. The following release would actually be the minor release, I think. I think September is the minor release.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Great. I know we have a few things in there. That'll be cool too. Karen, you've got the next. We'll pop into the discussion items. Next one's yours.
Yeah, so KubeCon is coming up in November, and the survey or forum just came out asking projects if they wanted to participate in the project pavilion. So usually we do these every conference. Just kind of wanted to gauge who's going, if people are able to help out with that. My current intention is to just sign up for the half days, which is what we've been doing in the past. And then also, if we want, we can request a project meeting room. I think this is like maybe half hour to an hour space that they kind of just give the projects to use however they need to, whether you want to like do a hackathon, work on something specific, talk about roadmaps, whatever. But that request is also due around August 18th. So again, just kind of gauging where everyone will be, if they'll be around, available to help, and if we have anything specific we'd want to target for the project meeting room.
Well, I'll say right now, I'll be there.
Yep, I'll be there also. I'm willing to help. So
likewise.
Yeah.
I'm also planning on it, although I have not bought my tickets yet. So I hope so.
Okay.
I assume that was for the project booth, not
Yes.
particularly about the meeting room. Okay.
Also the project meeting too. I guess we can brainstorm about, I mean, we could do that during this call too, if you'd like. Do you want to circle back to it if we have time after other things, or?
Yeah, I can circle back.
Okay. Yeah. I would really love some feedback too on what people thought about the Helm code base preview. I know we borrowed a lot of work that previously Matt Farina did to give people a nice tour of the Helm code base. And I was kind of curious what we thought. Yeah. Maybe I just did the opposite of circling back, just right into it. If anyone has any thoughts on that, we can circle back to it, or yeah. Because, I was asking because, hey, it might be good to do something like that again, just do another sort of round for asking folks if they, promoting the fact that we have triage maintainer positions open, and we had a few folks join after last time, and it might be good to do again. So. Okay, then the next discussion item is George's.
I don't know. There's probably not a super amount to discuss there. I just wanted to raise this. I don't think it was an announcement. So if anybody's interested, wants to take a look.
I had a quick look, George, while I saw you put it on there. And one thing I would like to see in it, just for my own, like, when would Helm and server side, like an example of when they'd behave differently?
I'm not entirely sure. Like, I think server-side apply. Well, sorry, the only one I know of is you can annotate things like arrays can be merged based on keys. I think I didn't actually go deep into the three-way merge code to see how Helm handles this, but you've got more metadata available with three-way merge. This was
I-
mostly just from reading the kube control docs and seeing that it was highlighted.
Yeah.
There could be differences, so I include this, but I need to actually go into code and start looking for
Yeah,
examples.
that's what I'd be really interested in, because like I had a quick look and it wasn't immediately obvious to me, and maybe they're very, very similar logic. There'd only be a few edge cases where things would be different. It wasn't very obvious to me when Helm and server-side apply would act different.
That's the hope and the presumption that they generally are compatible because you're just doing a merge but in different places. I'm sure
Yeah, I wonder how this would
there's
be
always
though.
differences.
Yeah, and with server-side apply, interesting thing about it is dry run wouldn't have access to the server. So you wouldn't be able to use server-side apply with dry run, right?
Yeah, we could use, there's that PR to make dry run server work.
Okay.
But I have a note down the bottom that dry run client and server side apply are not compatible.
Yeah, because that gets interesting then with you do a dry run to see what your output's going to be. And if you run it with server-side apply, it's actually built differently. And so how do we communicate that situation?
Mhm.
Right. And so we need to document, if you use server-side apply, then what your dry run output will be different than what's actually generated, could be different than what's generated with server-side apply.
Mhm.
Possibly, but it sounds like they might be the same algorithm, so it could be it could be there is no actual difference, right?
Well, if you get into custom resources, there will probably be a different algorithm because custom resources don't use the three-way. The three-way wasn't available to them. That needs to be done as an opt-in. And so if you're dealing with custom resources, there's a good likelihood that there'll be something there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's another behavioral difference. Yeah, server side apply can apply to custom resources. I did know that. I just forgot when you asked. But yeah, any comments, feedback will be welcome, and I'll try and my goal is to go into kube control code, server side apply code, Helm through a merge code, and try and like find out all the details, big archaeology group, and then have like a more clear idea of these things.
George, the reason that I was looking for that is the only part of that that I've ever worked with or played with was through the through controller runtime, like through the Go client for controller runtime, and I would love to like see what other options there are apart from that to work with server-side apply, because if that was the only option, then Helm couldn't really do it because it's a client only. We'd have to rely on controllers for that, but I would love, if you know more about that. I don't. I think that would be a good place to.
Okay, I can answer that quickly. Like when you want to specify server-side apply, you can just specify like in the header of the request the patch type.
Oh, okay.
And then so kube control can use server-side apply, for example.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. I'll look into this too.
Awesome, yeah, feedback appreciated.
Awesome. And then I think you have the next one too.
I don't know if this is a can of worms, but this guy was asking on Slack if anybody's considered other alternatives to templating. It sounds like he's kind of interested in pursuing this. We use QLang a bunch internally as well as like a wrapper to making Helm values. I like it. It's pretty solid and does like this job well.
Yeah.
That's more of a V4 for the new templating. It'd be something that, yes, we've kind of talked about in the past, but it would be more of a Helm V4 type thing.
I think so.
So
yeah, if anybody wants to sit more of an official stance, I just kind of say.
So I can give the history on this as well. If you went into Helm version 2, there was actually a mechanism to use multiple engines. We had produced the ability to make that an extension point and offered it up, and nobody ever took Helm up on it. And I remember because I think the internal variable for just to give a little history here. So Helm came out of Deas, which was a part of Engine Yard. And the internal variable name, I think, was called Engine Yard, because it specified the engine that things were built with. And nobody ever took us up on it. So in Helm version 3, that complexity was removed because even though it was there, it was never used. And nobody really complained that it was used, even though people asked for other engines and other abilities. They wanted people to do it who, you know, they were the core team. Go implement this for me. They weren't willing to contribute, and most people didn't really care. They were fine with Go templating. And so that's how we've gotten to where we're at, and it was yanked out. I think what we talked about a little bit was adding a Lua in, that you could do something with Lua, which would then let you bring in some of the stuff, other languages. I think that's been superseded by, well, really, if we were going to do it, you'd bring in WebAssembly and let people bring in other engines through WebAssembly. That way, they don't have to rely on us. The complexity is when you use another engine, anybody can download a chart, right? I can go look, anybody can grab a Bitnami chart and go and install it. So if you did it via a plugin, how would you tell people, hey, you don't have the plugin needed, go here to get it? You'd need to know about it, right? If you did it with a plugin, or you'd have to bake it into Helm, which means every possible engine would need to come into it. The only way to really cleanly do this, so that way, you know, we prioritize, if you look at the roles, that Helm user who's an installer who's just going to go install it. If you want to make that experience good for them, they need a chart to just work without having to be able to look inside and understand what's inside it. The only thing they should need to really have to deal with is the values file for the information they got to pass in. So if you use a different templating language, you need a way to package that up with the chart or have it bundled with Helm itself. Nobody ever wanted to bundle the additional ones with Helm and put in the work. So you'd have to bundle it with a chart, which really naturally leads itself to WebAssembly. And being able to include WebAssembly and other engines in the chart that way, something that we've lightly talked about, but nobody's ever gone after. I think it would be a great thing, but I think that's the route we would probably have to take to do it. But we've spent a lot of time on this in the past, and people just never really wanted to implement it in Helm.
The WebAssembly thing with Helm is something I've thought about quite a bit. And because I went down like the path of thinking, oh, you know what, wouldn't it be nice if we could use like YTT in Helm, or, you know, Q, or there's all these options. And, you know, I think everyone kind of naturally goes down that path at some point. But then I quickly got thinking, if you're going to have WebAssembly as a plugin format for a rendering image, or for a rendering engine, why not skip that and just compile your chart as a module and have Helm run your chart is now a WebAssembly module?
So one of the things you have to do is prioritize the Helm user and prioritize a certain amount of compatibility, right? Like the charts we have today, if we did a Helm version 4, you have to bring all of them forward and have them just work as is, or you break the community. Somebody's probably going to fork Helm. A lot of people are going to be angry, right? It doesn't really work for users. So how do we make that experience come forward? If you had a different type of chart, you'd have to do that as a new thing, and then only new Helm versions could work with that. That's probably a Helm version 4 thing. But if you did want to make it some kind of compile target, like a WebAssembly module that generated the output, that's probably possible, although I bet you it's pretty darn complicated. But that'd be like a Helm version 4 kind of thing.
Oh, it's definitely a Helm version 4 or 5 kind of thing, but it
But
has
that would
had
be, that would be like another version of a chart that somebody could do then and distribute that could work with it. But we'd have to keep the initial ones going. But yes, that could be a possibility.
So the interesting thing is, potentially with the right code, and WebAssembly is kind of early days, as probably many people on this call know, right? But potentially with the right libraries and the right code, you could actually compile a current Helm chart with the Golang templates to a WebAssembly module. And I think that would be like holy grail.
Well, The problem would be then, right? If somebody grabbed an old chart and just wanted to run it, then we'd have to compile it real time and then convert it and use it, right? The whole idea is you have to bring the ecosystem along with a really easy to use experience. And that's the hardest part, is bringing the ecosystem along and making things continue to work.
There would definitely have to be a version of Helm that supported WebAssembly charts and Golang charts.
And as far as some of this goes, yeah, WebAssembly is a bit early. You need a really good networking layer. You need, in order to do plugins and some of this, you need, there's certain components to it that I'm not sure if they're baked enough. They're still working on some of this. The Go support probably needs to get a little bit better because we write everything in Go around some of this. So we need a little bit more maturity before we could get there, but I'm hopeful. Give it time.
So, you know, half the reason I brought this up was to make sure I was pointing the guy in the wrong direction and saying like a hip to the sport and a Q lane. Just be like, no, we're never going to do that. But maybe I need to probably stress more that it's not like a small thing to implement and would require large ecosystem wide changes for it to be considered. Awesome. All right, thank you. I don't want to take all the time for the queue.
It's all right.
I did think there is there one thing I've been thinking about looking at some PRs is when do we close them as won't do? Like I've just been watching some and it seems like they're getting extremely unlikely that we'll ever merge them. And when do we say, hey, sorry, like really appreciate you put the effort in, you know, honestly, you did a great job, but like maybe we didn't communicate well enough that that wasn't something that we wanted in goals or something like that. But when do we say, hey, let's close this off so that it's not
We
just sitting
probably
out
should
there?
do that more often. We should do that more often. And if you see some you're questioning like that, feel free to throw them at me, and I'm more than happy to give feedback, or at least my 2 cents on it. Given some of the histories or complexities or just the current situation of the Helm project, whether it won't happen anytime soon.
Yeah, I'd like to see us get down to like at some point, like every PR is either on its way to being implemented or like.
Joe's been doing a good job to shout out to Joe. He's been mentioned a lot, even though he's not here.
He's been doing a great job with that. Yeah.
Yeah, he really has.
I do try when triaging. Like a lot of people come in with issues, and I try and either say a PR is welcome or it's just like, you know, kind of asking for something which is a bit strange. In lighter words, of course. But, I do try and bifurcate a triage time. So I don't want to tell people to make a PR for something that is probably not suitable. But it's hard to judge at that point, of course.
Absolutely. And the thing is, if it's unclear that maintainers think this is the right path to go, or that would even be in scope for what Helm wants to do, that would be a good time to point out the HIP process. But that's what those are for. You know, is like to say, hey, listen, we want to put in a much more thoughtful proposal to kind of argue.
Yeah, sorry. I should say I do that as well. Sometimes I
Exactly.
Yeah,
just as a reminder to other folks as well.
Yeah, I think it is important though, if we're going to send people down the HIP path, that we probably do pay attention to the HIPs and try to move them forward too.
Yeah, we need to figure that out, shore up some more maintainer time, that kind of stuff, and figure out how we're going to go with this. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, personally, like if I'm on the other end of a PR, I'd rather have somebody tell me no than leave it open forever. So I think it's probably better for all parties involved, right? If we try to find the ones that are a no and, you know, be honest with them and just be like, this is a no.
And give them a good reason for it. I think it's important to give people honest feedback and point them in a good direction. So at least they understand, even if they don't like it, at least they understand, and maybe they have a direction forward despite that.
Exactly. I was thinking, do we have a good place where we've actually listed things that are out of scope? I know that generally we've tried to tighten the scope. I think you've been a really big proponent of that, Matt, by continuing to reflect on how Helm's first job as a package manager. And I don't want to kind of get you on that track now. I think you've said your piece so many other times and places. But one place, I was thinking there's that, and maybe we could solidify that somewhere. One place where we do say something is explicitly out of scope is in the user profiles list that you mentioned earlier, the roles of the different people. There's one that's listed as explicitly out of scope, and maybe we could do something similar with Helm's scope and feature list. Per version. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea and absolutely something we should do. And I think it would require all of us to kind of get on I think it'd be just a great exercise period for all of us to be like, what do we see as in scope? What do we see as out of scope? And,
Yeah, generally we fall back on the strict backwards compatibility contract. But that doesn't necessarily mean that something could be backwards compatible, like make me a sandwich, or like the Pizza Hut API or something like this, but it doesn't mean it's in scope for Helm either too, so yeah, that would be, we do say it's said out there, but maybe it would just be good to put it in an easy place to find in Helm community or something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, are there any other discussion? I don't see any discussion items on the list, but does anyone have any discussion items they wanted to bring up and don't have access to write it down necessarily in the list on the doc?
For me, I am actually working on, so this year, I'm hoping if I can get time to do everything in life, we'll actually have presence at the keynotes, where we'll actually have a project updates for the Helm community to share. Just showing some of the new additions that we've made to the Helm maintainer team, as well as some of the recent changes are enhancements that have been releases that have come out in the community. Really want to say that Helm is still a very vibrant community, and come join the party.
Yeah. Cool. Yep, and I think we've already talked about this in Keybase, but I'm back online and all that good stuff for pitching in. And I think a few other people offered too, so that's great. Shout outs and social media amplification. I want to say shout out to man, Joe's not here right now, right? Well, I wanted to say shout out to Joe and Matt specifically. Excuse me, sorry. Obviously, shout out to, but Joe and George specifically for work that's been going into pull request reviews. Just awesome, and I know you're not the only two people doing it, and there are more shout outs deserved, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, thank you. That's mostly Joe for what's worth. He's really he's been chunking through them like 2 or 3 PRs a day. So
yeah,
good to go see it.
Okay, and then Karen said, let's see. I'm just looking at the chat. Okay, great. Yeah. So yes, roadmap items. I don't think that was said out loud, but we've mentioned it periodically, so we might want to put that in the notes under what you asked earlier about the different engine options. It just kind of always ties back to saying, hey, listen, when we label issues or PRs for Helm version 4, we can use that to help with the roadmap. So, great. And then in terms of the social media amplification, looks like Karen's going to tweet out the next patch release as soon as it's out. Oh, you know what? Karen, I would love that. I think I suggested that for the last like 2 or 3 project meetings. Maybe now's a good time because everybody, at least in Keybase, has decided, yes, it sounds good to have a Helm's Not Dead kind of talk about here are new maintainers, here are the new features, like Andy's just said. Maybe the V4 roadmap would be great. Might just be about timing. I would definitely help with that. So that's just my 2 cents. Okay, great. So assignments for next week. Wow, I didn't do a very good job. It's 1:59, but it looks like Matt and Karen already volunteered. I'm gonna do some PR review too, so you can put me down for that.
I'll do triage.
And the next, when does anyone see right now handy when the next Helm meeting is? Like what date it is? Is it the
17th.
17th? I can make it. I'll be there. Then I'll be on a different time zone for the next 2 weeks after that. So it might be harder. But okay, thanks everybody. You're great, you're awesome, and we'll see you next week. Bye.